Have you ever been working on a sound, but no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to get enough bass out of it? This video goes through 5 tips to enhance your low end. The tips are specifically focused on non-musical sound design, but most of these tips are useful for music as well, and in fact, some of them are tricks I stole from the music mixing world. So buckle up and get ready for some head-pounding bass. First, before you can try to mix bass, you need to be able to hear it. Most speakers don't go low enough on their own to be able to hear low bass and sub bass frequencies, so you probably want a decent subwoofer. I have a whole video that goes into how to add a subwoofer to your setup, so I won't cover that here. I'll also add that when it comes to sub bass, less is more. A lot of sound designers like to add low frequency enhancement on every sound they can. At that point, the bass just becomes obnoxious and our brain starts to filter it out and ignore it. That takes away from our ability to use low frequency enhancement to make sounds seem big and powerful. Just because you can make your mix have non-stop pounding bass doesn't mean you should. Alright, with that out of the way, it's time to dive into pumping up the low end of your sounds. The first 3 tips will cover how to add bass frequencies to sounds that don't have much low end, and the last 2 will cover enhancing and improving bass that's already there. First, you can enhance your low end with filtered pink noise. Pink noise is noise that has equal energy at every octave, which means it has a ton of energy in the lowest octaves. If we filter out the higher frequencies, above about 120 Hz, we can get this really meaty low-end rumble that blends in well with other sounds. This works especially well for adding bass to broadband sounds, for example a rushing waterfall. The downside of this approach is that pink noise is totally broadband with information at all frequencies. That means bass frequencies can sometimes clash with higher frequency sounds, especially ones that are more musical in nature. For example, a buzzing or humming sound. You can solve that issue with certain bass enhancement plugins, for example Submarine from Waves. Submarine works relatively similarly to pink noise enhancement, but it ensures that the frequency content added is harmonically similar to the sound it's enhancing, meaning you get less destructive interference from your bass. While pink noise enhancement works well for relatively broadband and slow-moving sounds, it doesn't work as well for more transient sounds, that is, sounds that happen very quickly, for example, gunfire. That's where sidechain gated sine waves come in. Sidechaining is a process that works differently in pretty much every audio program, so I'll leave it to you to figure out how to do it in yours, but the basic idea is pretty simple. Essentially, you take a sine tone generator tuned to a bass frequency, say 80 Hz, then you put a gate on it with a sidechain input from your primary signal. What that does is causes the gate to open only when the primary sound is making noise. It's a great approach because it can give you a really solid low-end kick, and because the sound is gated, it follows the envelope of the original sound, making it feel more connected and glued to that sound. If you're too lazy to set up that sidechain yourself, there are plugins that can do it for you. One example is SK10 by Waves Factory, which is a free plugin. The downside is the low-end boost is at a set frequency and can't be tuned, but it is a great way to quickly add some low-end kick to a transient sound.
Ends with a nightmare where all your dreams come true.
You can also use pitch shifting to create low-end content. You can either pitch shift the sound itself or shift a copy of the sound and blend it with the original. The advantage of this approach is that you're not adding anything to the sound that isn't already there. You can also shift in octave increments to ensure that your low end is still harmonically related to the higher frequency sounds. The downside is that pitch shifting tends to create artifacting if you aren't careful. It does help to have sounds recorded at a higher sample rate so you have more frequency information to work with. You can use a simple pitch shifting plugin to do this. If I'm blending the pitch shifted version with the original, I like to filter out the higher frequencies in the pitch shifted version. There are also special pitch shifting tools that can give you better results in certain situations. My favorites are Celemony Melodyne, which is designed for pitch shifting vocals, and Little Altar Boy by Soundtoys, again designed for vocals but a slightly different sound. You can also time stretch the sound to lower the pitch. Slowing down a sound naturally lowers the frequency. Most time stretching tools compensate by adjusting the pitch, but if you can disable the pitch adjustment, time stretching is a great way to get really natural pitch change. Like our previous examples, there are also plugins that can do all of this for you. Low Air by Waves pitch shifts and filters sound to blend in with the original sound in order to enhance the low end.
In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true. In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true. In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true.
In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true.
In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true. In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true.
In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true.
In this waking nightmare, where all your dreams come true.
For our fourth tip, we're switching to ways to enhance bass content that's already there. One of the best ways to do this is with psychoacoustic enhancement, for example by using R-bass from Waves. R-bass adds additional harmonic information to bass sounds, which tricks our ears into perceiving the bass as louder, especially on speakers that don't have as much low-end response. The downside is that the additional harmonics can cloud the mid-range of your mix if you use it excessively. Our last tip is pretty broad, but I'll show you several ways to utilize it. The idea is to use multiband processing to target your low end and shape it more aggressively. For those who don't know, multiband processing is any kind of processing that lets you process different frequency ranges separately. A lot of tools can help enhance your bass, but when used on the whole signal, they end up destroying and clouding it. The specific tricks I'll demonstrate here are compression, distortion, and reverb. Multiband compressors are common tools. I'm using Wave C6. Basically, we can target just our bass frequencies and aggressively compress them. This will bring out more of that low-end content without destroying the dynamics of the higher frequencies. OTT by Xfer is another popular tool for this type of processing, and it's also free. I also like Multi-Transient by Audio Assault, which is technically a transient shaper, but it's a similar idea and works well for shaping your bass. Distortion does essentially the same thing as compression by limiting the peaks and making the sound louder and more even overall, but it also adds harmonics that can thicken the sound. There are multi-band distortion plugins, but I like to do it myself by sending my sound to another track and just manually filtering out the higher frequencies. That approach lets me use any distortion plugin I want. My personal favorites are Radiator by Soundtoys, IVGI by Klang, which is free, and Head Crusher by Audio Assault. You can filter before the distortion plugin to only distort the low frequencies and get all the grungy harmonics, or filter after the plugin to keep those extra harmonics from clouding your mid-range. Lastly is multiband processing with reverb, but in this case it's to remove reverb. Reverb can add a lot of sustain to your sub-bass and take away from the punch and energy and eat up your headroom. Filtering out the low end from your reverb can help retain clarity, and in fact most reverb plugins have tools to do this built right in. Anyway, those are my 5 tips for helping to enhance and boost your low end and get a lot of nice thick bass out of your mix. If you liked these tips, if you thought they were useful, definitely hit that like button. If not, feel free to hit the dislike button. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those down in the comment section down below. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this, definitely hit that subscribe button.